Howdy. I thought it might be a fun little, well, maybe a little bit frightening, but I thought it'd be worth looking over the topic, or a general topic of hyperinflation. And I think this is just a little bit of a history lesson, and not to say that this is what we're going to be seeing, definitely, but I think that it's those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. It's a very famous quote, so I just thought it'd be interesting looking at the 5 worst cases of hyperinflation. So, we have this from nobadcapitalist.com, and yeah, let's just look at these 4 cases of hyperinflation and see what else is in relationship to it, right? I mean, see if we can formulate any patterns that are occurring here. So, first one here, number 5, Greece in 1944. How does 18% inflation every single day sound? Well, this is the number 5, so that's not even bad. But just think, if prices are increasing 20% on your carton of milk, a bag of potatoes, it's going up 20% every day. That's what happened. It's happened before within the last 100 years, and people are quite unaware that this is even a plausible thing that could happen in some type of proportion, let's say. Maybe it's not this bad. Maybe it's 1% a day. That's pretty bad still, in my opinion. So, what is the culprit? A dramatic drop in foreign trade thanks to World War II. So, it makes sense that, well, when you get occupied by a foreign country, that the country resorted to using its central bank to one thing here that I'm going to highlight: print the money. It was due to the war, but what happened? They printed the money, right? And it caused the worst hyperinflation. Okay, let's just keep going. Germany, 1923. Another thing consequently from war. So Germany lost the war and was within the treaty. One of their stipulations was that they had to pay war costs, right? Also with interest, I was assuming, and they had to pay a portion of their GDP, their trade profit, as well as kind of make these reprehensions. It's basically forced to sell huge amounts of the mark for foreign currencies, which with they're eligible to make payments. So no one wanted it, so they just basically started selling it to get other currency at any price to get cash in the door, which led to the hyperinflation here. So another situation where they weren't, well, yeah, they were basically printing it just to buy some other currency, right? Maybe it doesn't say explicitly here that they were printing, but regardless, it's a case of hyperinflation, right? And this has a little bit more of a unique situation, a unique setting that resulted in it, but you can see the result was the same, and prices were doubling every 4 days, basically. Inflation at 29.5%. Germans were exhausted by post-war reparations and were all too eager to hear Hitler's message, right? So sometimes it's the current climate that you put someone in that might have made them open to, let's say, this dictator here, right? Seeing that they were in such horrible position, they were just looking for anyone to be a savior. So maybe people that, like to say those effing Nazis, and Nazi this, Nazi that. I mean, yeah, I mean, if I try to stand up for the Nazis, no, but I'm trying to stand up for the German people. The German people were subjugated to an inflation of 30,000 frickin' percent, right? And maybe it's just a little bit worthwhile to take a step back and have some empathy for the people and under those pretenses, right? I mean, they're in a horrible time, and it wasn't their fault in some respect. I mean, most people don't understand what this would feel like, right? Let's just continue on. I'm not just sitting here I'm just saying that it creates a little bit of empathy how someone like this may rise to power, right? Yugoslavia, 1994, when the Soviet Union fell, Yugoslavia was hit drastically, partially because the communist system of government failed to break up. So it basically was, giving out a lot of money, right? I mean, besides, they were refusing to trade with each other, which kind of made it worse, right? So when trading shuts down, it could lead to hyperinflation, right? That's another thing to look at. Trading. Economic sanctions from the West only made it worse, and retain communist policies. So, quality of outcome. Make sure everyone gets their share, even if you don't have it. Cause them to overspend, overborrow, and lose control of money creation. What? Printing money. In 1994 alone, inflation was 313 million%. Prices doubled every 34 hours as currency was eventually revalued 5 times in 2 years. Crazy, right? So along with some communist type of government, what's that sound like? Well, that's Russia. Yeah, that's what it was. I mean, that's China. That's also, well, semi-Canada, right? I mean, we got so many programs, so much printing, so much borrowing, we're overspending. I mean, you see the connection? Zimbabwe, 2008. Imagine prices doubling every 24 hours. That's what happened in Zimbabwe's run-in with inflation in 2008, when inflation reached unheard levels of 79 billion%. Eventually, they ditched their currency and they used the rand or US dollar. So what happens is that, same thing with Germany, they ain't using marks anymore, right? They had to reestablish a new currency. The whole system failed. Fiat currency is all doomed. There's never been one that's made it. So right here in Zimbabwe, it looks like they're practicing some communism too, because it looks like we got private property confiscation. So they'll come and confiscate all your property and redistribute it. Redistributing land from white Zimbabwe, so it looks like there's a little bit of racial tension here too. Let's take it away from those people that have the farms and let's redistribute it, and then we're all going to die of starvation. Sounds like Russia to me. And also there was some civil wars that were right in the near, and a loaf of bread cost 35 million Zimbabwe dollars. And they're a number one case of hyperinflation. World War II left Hungary economically devastated thanks to being in a war zone. Their reserves were largely depleted to help Germany fight the war, and the debt was never repaid because obviously Germany was in debt to the world. After the war, Hungary was forced to pay reparations to the Soviets as the Allies took control of its budget, and reparations nearly half of all revenues. At its peak, inflation reached a mind-boggling 13.6 quadrillion% per month. Like, the largest banknote denomination was 100 quintillion. Like, I don't even know what those numbers mean. Causes prices to double every 15 hours. So just imagine that, like, you're seeing whatever you want. The price of milk going from 3, 6, 12, 24, 48. I mean, you get the point, right? I mean, you're just sitting there looking at your money just fall right through your hands, eh? I mean, and I think quite an interesting article, right? I mean, we're just gonna exit out of that because let's just look at where I'm from right now. So we're right here, just in Canada, and this is I think it's just an average, the annual inflation rate of Canada. So the thing we have to realize is that there always is inflation, right? Your money is always inflating, which means that you're losing value if you're holding just money. And usually when you put it in a savings account, you know, if you're not getting 2.2% a year, which is the current rate of inflation, you're actually losing money, right? You're actually losing money just holding a cash position. And you can see, like, there's obviously periods of times where in Canada we were up pretty high, where we had rates of inflation of 20% in a year. Nothing like in comparison to those extreme examples that I've seen, but also you can just say that you could see the real use case of some countries, especially less solid countries, owning assets that protect you against inflation, right? And in Canada, it looks like over the last little while, we haven't seen anything reach those kind of crazy numbers, right? But a lot of times they say what precedes hyperinflation, they say deflation does. That's sometimes what they say. That's not what sometimes they always say that. Deflation supersedes hyperinflation. So when you see negative interest rates, when you see deflation happening, it's worrisome. In Canada, we're not on that trend. We're not quite there, but looking at some of this stuff might be worthwhile in your estimation in the future, right? To see what is a possibility here. So we're not quite there in Canada yet. So I wouldn't don't take it like I'm saying that we're on that route quite yet. But do you trust this information too, right? I mean, we can say that we're up and down. I think admits what's coming. Okay, this is going to be something that I want to look at. I mean, a lot of the data just seems like kind of delayed or old with this, so it kind of sucks, to be honest. So I'm just going to exit out of this, and yeah, that's my screen recorder, but we're just going to look at some pictures here, because gold, so you can see this within 1 year, how crazy their currency was just basically deemed value, worthless. Right here I have Venezuela, which didn't make the list, right? But there's other cases of hyperinflation, right? So Venezuela in 2018 had hyperinflation of 14,000%. Pretty crazy, right? Even this U.S. 2.5%. Your money is being devalued. It's in a good year, right? So right here, gold price and marks during hyperinflation. You can see the years we're at about 100. I think the point is made, right? Gold will be your savior, right? During these times, if hyperinflation is going to occur in your place in the world. Let's just continue to look at some pictures, because these pictures kind of have a picture says 1,000 words, right? So right here we can see that inflation for them too was fine, right? And it slowly accumulated up during this time frame, and then we just had a blow off, right? It just blowed off the top. So before it was $170 to buy an ounce of gold, and like those numbers are kind of ridiculous, right? You have to keep in mind that gold didn't necessarily become super more valuable. It was just that the German dollar was worthless, right? And that's how many German dollars you needed in just a span of 4 years, and you can see the point I'm trying to make, right? Here's just oil supply to the States. Venezuela back in here, you can see that they were exporting a decent amount of oil to the States. What's that mean? I don't know. It was just kind of interesting to see how much Canada exports. It's interesting to see how much is this going to be happening right now, and with the price of oil, how's that going to do for our economy? Right here's another chart, just looking at the consumer price index from 1775 to 2016, looking at inflation. So historically, governments usually before, let's say pre-1910, go off the gold standard to create inflation and to fund wars. The U.S. has been in a perpetual state of war since 1987. So they go off the gold standard to create inflation and to fund wars. So I guess that's what the point that this is saying. Since 1913, U.S. dollar has been in its perpetual state of inflation, because it's saying from these wars, I guess, right? Because that's the thing. I mean, I could also sit here and start looking at these cups. That's what starts looking at my head, but you can see this is overextended, isn't it? And look at all this war. Look at all this war, right? Look at all this printing of money to fund all this war. Interesting, right? To me, very interesting. Let's just keep looking at a couple. So history buffs remember the trajectory of the German hyperinflation between here. Venezuela's path illustrated is eerily similar. So it's just boom, 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 value one gold mark. Remember we looked at some of this? How many bolivars? Not too good, right? I mean, so you can see for some of these countries are a lot worse shape than Canada. Way worse. Just keep on looking here. Hyperinflation, 1923. Germany cannot afford to pay its reparations. French and Belgian troops invade the Ruhr. Government ordered the workers to go on strike, passive resistance. What's this remind me of? To go on strike, to not be working. We're kind of right there. Government prints monies to pay the workers out. Oh, what's happening now? I'm getting money right now. Paying workers, I'm not doing nothing. Workers being able to begin to spend their money quickly. Shopkeepers put prices up. I'd say we're in this phase, right? If we are truly in here, we're not where the prices start rising, right? We're not at getting paid twice a day. We're not at the failure of the mark to print a new Breton mark. That's just the history, though, that what happened, right? And I think the printing of the money is the point that I want to bring across. Reasons for this in Zimbabwe: hyperinflation, government deficits. What government is not in a crazy deficit right now? Was what? Printing money to finance involvement in the war, right? But we're printing money all the same, right? Another motive for excessive money creation was the self-dealing transparency of this, industrialized corruption. So they're also being corrupt. It doesn't help. Regardless, let's just continue on here. In here, we're just looking at this, and let's look at main episodes of hyperinflation, all within this time frame here. Austria, Germany, Poland, Russia, Hungary, Greece, Hungary too. Yeah. So this is where that's the worst case in history. It's just unbelievable, right? I mean, it's not even funny. This is just the monthly, right? The monthly inflation. So to see that kind of percent per month, it should make you at least aware that this is not completely impossible. Let's just look at China, another communist country. Look at that. Who knows what's the price of money in China? Another communist, right? The printing of money. So what do the pictures look like? What's a picture of that look like? Well, a downward spiral of money, right? I thought that was kind of cool. I mean, there's always these other pictures here. Oh, too bad that these weren't coming up a little bit more, but you can see Mr. Man here. He's got a wheelbarrow of money. He doesn't look too happy with it either. It's not what you typically see when people have a wheelbarrow of money. What do we have here? We also have someone with a huge thing of cash. Does he look happy? He doesn't look happy. What else we got here? We got kids. Look at the old Lego. Cash. There's no use for it anyway. As well as the kids play with it. Let's look at one more picture here. The central banks and the demagogues who manipulate the economy. So, what do we have? Demonetization. 1% on target to own 2/3 of all wealth by 2030. Looking that way. A fiat currency debasement. Fall of the fiat currency in total. 325 trillion global debt. 0 and negative interest rates. A $38 trillion global housing debt. 30 trillion in global quantitative easing. And all these countries that have experienced hyperinflation in the last 100 years, 29 of them are experiencing it again in the last 25. An interesting picture, and I got this one from a Bitcoin kind of thing, because the main advocates historically of inflation have been things like gold, have been things like silver, not money, have been things like silver, gold and silver, gold and toilets. Maybe not that quite far, but yes, is gold the key to saving your wealth during these times? Is gold a good place to hold your money historically? It is. It is very good. And that's where some people will make the jump and say that, well, digital gold, Bitcoin, may have also some of those retaining characteristics. Now, each person can be their own dictator of the future. But I thought that it was just an interesting little history lesson to say, hey, so this is not the whole chart, but I wish I had the whole chart looking at that. I did have some good charts, I thought, that were showing nicely how gold was actually and of course I think this was the one I was looking at. Deflation period, gold kept stable. So in this period where all those Germans lost 30,000% on their cash value, gold kept stable. That's the biggest point. Like, gold's not going to make you just crazy rich, right? But it's this very, very good thing to have to prevent you from things like hyperinflation. And am I saying that in Canada and North America hyperinflation is coming tomorrow? No, but oh yeah, it could be coming. It could be coming around the world potentially. I mean, and that's just it's a good little history lesson. That's all it is. There's going to be a lot of time to look and see that coming, but I thought it was just an interesting little tidbit. So I'm going to call that a video, and hopefully you found it fun. All right, see you guys.